But if you are in a spiritual world where you have an energetic body but not a physical body that can get sick, and nothing bad can happen to you, your energy body can't get sick, you can't run out of energy, you can't get tired, you can't run out of food, other energy bodies that are conscious beings around you can't hurt you, all you can do is love one another. Eventually you will just become a bunch of energetic clouds of dopiness floating around in a cloud of love that don't even know it's love anymore. Because without the polarity, without the lack, you would just be that flat white line in a white room going straight with a constant hum. Now as that constant hum goes along, if you start adding in bits of suffering, which is not nice, but if you start adding in moments where you feel lack, if you add in a moment where somebody you love passes and goes to another realm that you can't see, then those gaps in that tone, that constant tone, start to create the music, which is the experience of life. You see, when, for instance, if you are that energetic body without a physical, without a body that suffers, and other ones around you can die, then eventually you're going to suffer because you're going to miss them. But they need to die, because otherwise you don't have the vibrance of life. Otherwise you're on the constant flat white line. And if you try, an interesting exercise I find is put yourself in the position of God. How would you create the experience of life and understanding of love into reality? If not using matter and you use a pure light body, then how do you create the separation of the awareness within the light bodies, so as they have an experience that's worthwhile and don't just all roll into the same pool and just disappear into a oneness of stillness and no events whatsoever? You know, presumably that is the position that God found himself in at the beginning of all that was. He said, I'm sick of being this flat white line.
Weapons always close to end, for he has seen too much hatred. And the weapon that he chooses is love, universal call. Now for justice.
Hey guys, so I just had a comment on my Jim Carrey video that I replied to, and it made me want to just dodge outside with the camera and speak about this topic. The comment was saying many things, and it was saying that they see materiality as the cause of suffering, but matter as the cause of suffering, and they really don't see the point in an existence based upon matter. And I think this is a very interesting topic, because people can frown upon the material world and the world of matter, as it were, the physical world that we can touch. But this is because people separate that world from the spiritual world, and the two must coincide with one another. You simply can't have one without the other. I can't perceive a way that we could have this experience without it. Now, I've gone through periods here where I'm working with children who have been abused and raped and all these heinous, horrible things I have to deal with, and children who are so massively traumatized, probably some of the most traumatized children on the planet. And you think to yourself, why do we bother, or why does God bother having this existence based upon matter, this physical world that we live in? I mean, there's so much suffering from it. Wouldn't it be just better off without it? But you see, suffering might come from the world of matter, and that's because suffering comes from not being in a perfect state of ease within our lives and our body, be it emotionally, spiritually, physically, health-wise, mentally. All of these things lead us away from what we perceive to be a very peaceful state, and that peaceful state we can achieve in meditation, where we are not suffering once we've managed to acquire what we need food-wise, etc., for our existence and the fueling of our bodies. We can reach this space of non-suffering and stillness, and we can say, oh, it's so peaceful there. And we can go back to the material world, back to matter, as it were, back to the density of the physical body. And we can very easily wonder, what's the point in this physical body? Well, the point is in the journey back to it. And the polarity is the thing that's important. You see, matter might very well be the cause of suffering. The physical world might be the cause of suffering. But if you eliminate the physical world and the ups and downs and the bad and the good and the hunger and the fullness and or the satiation and the hot and the cold and the fear and the love, and you just rise up beyond all of that to the field or the plane of existence of something of just pure, unadulterated love. Just pure 100% love. Well, I think it would be very easy for us, even with our human perceptions, to realise that form of reality would soon be forgotten, that it is even love. Because you would be, it's almost as if you're in a white room, travelling on a white line, hearing one constant tone without any gaps. You know, if there's no pause in the music, it's not music, it's just one constant. And the suffering is like a pause in the music, is what I'm leaning towards here. But you'd be in this white room on a white line with one constant sound, and this is the state of perfect love. What would happen after you dwelled within there for 100 years, a million? You just would blend in and become the constant state of perfect love. If you were to be a point of awareness and consciousness within there, you would just be on a constant journey, and you wouldn't even know if it was good or bad. You would just simply be on a flat line, travelling without any understanding. And without any up or down, you've got nothing to compare it to. You've got nowhere to be grateful for it. Nowhere at all. You can't be grateful if you're in a constant state. That could be a constant state of suffering for you, for all you know. But you've got nothing to compare it to. It is nothing, ultimately. It's not even an experience. And you see, experiencing reality, experiencing life, or sitting on a flat line is why matter must exist. Because matter might be the root of all suffering, but matter is also the root of enlightenment. You must have the material world if you are to enlighten. Because you must have the material world to make your journey back to that flat white line. And then it's arguable that achieving the point where you sit on that flat white line is not actually what you're aiming for. The whole point is the journey back to it. Now, we could say that the spiritual world beyond matter is a place of no suffering, but in which case it's a place of constant love and constant joy. Well, again, at what point are you going to lose gratitude because you don't know what sadness is? At what point are you going to... It'll happen. It has to happen within the very fabric of that experience. If you've got nothing to compare it to, then you won't be grateful. So what's the point in it? And this is why matter gets a bad rap. The physical world gets a bad rap. But without it, you can't have this. You can't pursue God if you constantly are just in God. Just constantly, not even, but constantly. What is the point in that journey? What is the use of it? And God blessed us by shattering that constant white line and putting us down here and saying, here is your experience, to return to here and to grow wise and to understand why this experience is going on. And when you attain the point where you get to the spiritual world, let's say you shed yourself of your material body and of all matter, and you get to there, are we really to believe that again you go to an experience that there's no ups and downs and there's no struggles? Now, this person said, what about angels? They don't need a physical body. Well, what does an angel do without a human being to look after? What do angles of light, which is what angels are, what do they do without a set of eyes to go into and to guide and to speak to and to nourish and to care for? What do they do? travelling around doing angel stuff that's non-related to looking after those on the journey of the physical realm. You see, what I'm getting at is it's all one. The matter, the light, the spiritual world, the spiritual plane, it's all absolutely intertwined as one, and it's completely necessary. All of it is completely necessary, including the suffering that we go on. For all, I am doing all I can to end a lot of that suffering. Because we have this experience with free will. Now, if there was no free will, again, it would be an utter waste of time for God to create, or for us to experience anything, because you'd just be a machine going around a computer program. Waste of time. Nothing to grow, nothing to learn from, just being told what to do constantly. Now, because we have free will, people are beginning to abuse it. And because of the abuse of free will, this is at the point where I say to myself, there's no need for that child who's just come into the world to suffer so much just because that human being exercises their free will to hold on to resources that should be assisting that child. And this is how I see my purpose here now. Yes, I can meditate and I can reach up to that flat white line that we call nirvana, that state of non-suffering where you don't feel anything. But when I come back down, or when I open my eyes from sitting under the Bodhi tree, as the Buddha would do, then those children are still there. They're still suffering terribly. And some of them have even completely amnesically forgotten about the flat white line. They don't remember it. And they turn in another direction and become so focused, and so some suffering can produce evil in that way as well. But again, I mean, who am I to say what good is? Because without evil, you wouldn't even know what good is. People say to me, you're a good person. I say, oh, thank you, it's very kind of you to call me a good person, but you wouldn't have any idea I was good if everybody was good. And thus you wouldn't care if I was a good person if everybody was good. It would just simply be. And this is the peculiarity of the need for polarity, of the need for the yin and the yang, and the need for the spiritual plane and the material plane, is that God gets backed into a corner of how to do this, how to give you this experience of life, how to give you the experience of being a free individual point of awareness and consciousness dancing its own individual dance, without having these things in the world. But sadly, I very much believe that there is a great deal of malfunctions going on. And I think those malfunctions come from human free will predominantly. You know, a lot of the evil acts you must be conscious of. Nature does not know, for instance, evil. Humans might perceive it and say that's an evil thing going on in nature. But for nature, it's just a happening. For humans, we can perceive it and say that's kind of evil, what's happening there. It's a very difficult subject to communicate. But polarity is a necessity. And if you want to go on the path of enlightenment, you have to understand that the enlightenment can only exist as an experience if you have a state of non-enlightenment. And thus, nirvana can only exist if you have a state of matter, or the physical body. And yes, matter is the root of all suffering, but matter is also the root of the awareness of all states of love. It's also the root of the awareness of all states of goodness. It's also the thing that gives reason for angels to exist. Because if we took away matter, we take away the very foundation as we know it of existence, and we take away matter, what are you left with? Maybe we could have a non-physical body that never gets sick and so on and so forth, and just be in the spiritual world. But if you are a body of energy that is separated from the other bodies of energy, but you don't have physical matter, and you can experience ups and downs and sadness and happiness and hunger and lack, then you will be experiencing life. But if you are in a spiritual world where you have an energetic body but not a physical body that can get sick, and nothing bad can happen to you, your energy body can't get sick, you can't run out of energy, you can't get tired, you can't run out of food, other energy bodies that are conscious beings around you can't hurt you. All you can do is love one another. Eventually you will just become a bunch of energetic clouds of dopiness floating around in a cloud of love that don't even know it's love anymore. Because without the polarity, without the lack, you would just be that flat white line in a white room going straight with a constant hum. Now as that constant hum goes along, if you start adding in bits of suffering, which is not nice, but if you start adding in moments where you feel lack, if you add in a moment where somebody you love passes and goes to another realm that you can't see, then those gaps in that tone, that constant tone, start to create the music, which is the experience of life. You see, when, for instance, if you are that energetic body without without a body that suffers, and other ones around you can die, then eventually you're going to suffer because you're going to miss them. But they need to die, because otherwise you don't have the vibrance of life. Otherwise you're on the constant flat white line. And if you try, an interesting exercise I find is put yourself in the position of God. How would you create the experience of life and understanding of love into reality? If not using matter and you use a pure light body, then how do you create the separation of the awareness within the light bodies? So as they have an experience that's worthwhile and don't just all roll into the same pool and just disappear into a oneness of stillness and no events whatsoever. You know, presumably that is the position that God found himself in at the beginning of all that was. He said, I'm sick of being this flat white line. And here's the funny thing. As he did get sick of being that flat white line, presumably I'm him talking to you. No, I didn't just say I'm God, but I'm saying I'm connected to the beginning of it all. If you're a person of science and the Big Bang set it all off, you are the bang banging, I'm the bang banging. You listening is the bang banging, me speaking is the bang banging. And so, in the element of creative force from God, as he was in that constant state of love and peace, and he just went, well, what's the point in this? Let me have an experience here. Let me have a separation of this energy in individual points of awareness, so we can all begin to grow and learn and experience things in a new way. And so matter gets a bad rap. The physical, dense world gets a bad rap, and it's a horrible thing to be within. I find it very difficult to be constantly grounded all the time. I wouldn't want to be, or materially focused. But we have to remember that for all the root of suffering lay within matter. The concept of enlightenment only exists due to matter. And the concept of love, and the gratitude we have for love, and understanding how important love is, only exists because of matter. Its home is rooted in matter, because inside matter is where we can experience a state of being disconnected from that love, and that generates gratitude. Just wanted to share that anyway. God bless, guys. Bye.
Coming with his own designs, his own style, his own awakening. Told me yes he can forgive, but he can never forget it. Weapons always close to end, for he has seen too much hatred. Only weapon that he chooses is love, universal